Hello everyone. I want to discuss for a moment the mitzvah of Sotah, the waters of Sotah. If you have any questions, or you have any suggestions or additions and corrections, emails Naftali Prager, NAFTALIPRAGER @yahoo.com. All corrections and suggestions are welcome. So the Rabbi points out to an interesting curiosity about the mitzvah of the waters of Sotah. Sotah is the only mitzvah in the Torah out of 613 mitzvahs that has a miraculous element to it. The waters took effect and proved. The story of the Sotah is a woman that has a cloud of suspicion over her, and in order to restore the trust in this marriage, the woman drinks the waters of the Sotah, and that will declare her, if she survives it, that shows that she's innocent, and if she doesn't, that shows she's guilty. And that is not there's no medical reason why this potion should take a life. It's simply the words of this portion, the Torah, scraped off into the water. And if that's doing the trick, clearly it's miraculous. And why is it, of all the mitzvahs, that this one has a miraculous element to it? The second idea is that, generally speaking, we are not allowed to erase the name of God. If you write out the name of God, you can't erase it. So God says, my name that was written with sanctity, that has sanctity to it, that has to be treated with care, I declare that it should be erased, it should be scraped off into this potion in order to bring peace, restore peace and trust between husband and wife. And we see from these two surprising elements to the mitzvah, to the waters of Sotah, the enormous import and the enormous significance of a Jewish home and a Jewish marriage. So I'd like to take a moment just to discuss what the Torah's idea and ideal of a marriage between husband and wife. We see another fantastic idea in the Rekanti. The great Kabbalist, the Rekanti, says that when Avimelech kidnapped both Sarah and Rivka, that was an assault on the marriage of Avram and Sarah, and Yitzchak and Rivka, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah. Just the fact that she was abducted was an assault on the privacy of their home. The fact that this is the fathers and mothers of the Jewish people, they're the foundation of the Jewish people, means that anything that happened to them has ramifications till today. He says that the fact that Sarah and Rivka were abducted is what caused the two temples to be destroyed. There's something off. There was some slight assault on the marriage of Abraham and Sarah, which are the forefathers and foremothers of the Jewish people. That caused an indescribable seismic shift and seismic effect that had a ramification centuries later. The Gemara tells us in Yevamis that a man who has children and has no intention of having more children, does not have a wife, he should get married. As the Torah says in Bereshis, Lo tov hayois ha'adam levada, it's not good for man to be alone. And the Ravid, in his introduction to his work, explains what that means. And he says that the message of that it's not good for man to be alone, that he has to be married, is really born out of the very creation of Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava. And he says like this, he says, we know that all of the creatures, all of the animal kingdom, God created male and female separately and simultaneously. All of a sudden there were birds, there were animals, both male and female, and at the same time he created the two distinct beings that are going to come together to procreate and continue their species. And that was perfectly fine. There was no need to do anything any different. He created two separate beings, they come together, they mate, and then often they go their separate ways. He says the idea is because they have no true notion of marriage or any sort of meaningful bond or relationship, and therefore there's no sanctity to their match. It's purely a marriage or a mating of convenience. for the purpose of procreating and perpetuating their species. Not so is mankind. We're not animals, we're not forms of animals, and we're a whole different sphere of being, and things were very different. What happened? God created Adam, and then from Adam he created Eve, where he created them as one being and then separated them according to the Talmud and Brachas. What's the idea? The idea is because had they been created separately, so what would they be? It would be two separate beings with two separate identities, and that would actually have an effect on how they relate to each other. They would come together for the purpose of creating a family. That might be very productive. There might be health benefits to marriage. There might be financial benefits to marriage. It would be mutually beneficial, but it would certainly they would not be able to see themselves as one being. They would not be able to see themselves as part of one whole. So God instead created them as one being and then separated them. And even though that was the only Adam and Eve, but for us, that tells us that our spouses and the people that we marry have the potential to be the other half of our soul. And therefore, we are to cherish the spouse, and we are to treat the other one as we treat our own very self. We know in halacha there's a concept of ishto kegufo. A person's wife is like himself, and that has ramifications in halacha, that we sometimes view them as one entity. The Torah says that when Adam gave names to the animals, he did not find a helper amongst all the animal kingdom. That doesn't mean that he could have potentially had a match or a mate among the animal kingdom. It means to say that system of creating animals would have not worked for him. God had to create something from his very being so that he can be living together for the rest of his life with literally a part of himself. This is the statement of the Torah. It is not good that man be alone means he has to marry. And he has to go a step further than that. He can never, even inside a marriage, be alone. So two people can be married and feel very alone. We have to be within the marriage and united and see ourselves as two parts of a whole and two souls that are two halves of one whole soul. And the true marriage, as depicted by the Torah, is not one in which two people simply come together to produce offspring, but one in which husband and wife become fully united, a single being, as they were at creation. This way they come to love each other, treasure each other as part of themselves, and that has an impact on the home that they create together. As the Torah concludes, on that very same verse, it is not good that man be alone, and they should become one flesh. One flesh, they should be one united being. A good Shabbos to all.